The Nigeria Center for Disease Control reports 122 new coronavirus infections in the country as federal government expressed confidence the disease will soon end. Presidential Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity Dr clears the air after backlash over his comments on Borno killings. In international news, Israeli legislators passed draft proposals to dissolve parliament. And in sport, league management company says NPFL won't start next Sunday.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has confirmed 122 new cases of coronavirus in the country on Wednesday, pushing up the nation's total confirmed cases to 67,960. Only 4,121 patients are still being treated. Kaduna reported the highest number of cases at 37, followed by Lagos with 29. Plateau held 25, while Ekiti hosts 9 cases. Rivers, Ogun, Edo, Kwara, Bayelsa, Bauchi, and Kano shared the rest of the infections. And CDC also reports the fatalities now stand at 1,177. The federal government says it is confident COVID-19 pandemic will soon disappear, especially with the vaccines under trial showing more than 90% effectiveness. Secretary to the Government of the Federation and Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Boss Mustafa, made the comment at a World AIDS Day event in Abuja on Tuesday. Mustafa said Nigerians should continue to observe all health precautions to avoid infections. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has launched a hashtag COVID19 Nigeria Stories blog to document Nigeria's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The center's Director General, Dr. Chikwe Ihekwazu, announced this in Abuja on Saturday, and correspondent Kelechi Mekalam was there.
The COVID-19 Nigeria Stories are compiled and told right here at the National Center for Disease Control. It's the brainchild of the agency's boss, Chikwe Ihekwazu. It's at the core of the agency's plan to preserve all the stories, battles, and the victories recorded throughout the pandemic. The blog also serves as a reminder that behind the statistics are real people.
We thought it was important to develop a platform where a select number of people have stories of their experience during the outbreak and share that with the world. And that's really what motivated the development of this blog. We really want to achieve a scenario where the connection between people and what has happened is kept and preserved forever. And that people find a space where they can connect in a lot deeper way with what has happened.
The platform features stories about health workers, community response activities, and more. The blog hopes the stories will help people to emotionally connect with the present realities, as many Nigerians still doubt that the virus exists, and accessing those who are willing to tell their stories has been a daunting task.
Perhaps one of the biggest challenges we face is that of stigmatization and people coming out to tell their stories. You know, the COVID-19 was an unprecedented outbreak. We saw what we had never seen before. The virus spread rapidly. Some people had negative perception about the virus, and a lot of them were stigmatized as well, including health workers.
The Nigeria CDC is working with implementing partner Nigeria Health Watch and supported by the Ford Foundation. There's been no official launch yet, but the blog is currently running on the agency's website and it's accessible to members of the public.
After getting wind of comments made by Presidential Senior Special Assistant on Media and publicity Garba Shehu on the plight of the victims of Borno killings. Residents of Zamamari in Borno are incensed and have responded by saying they have never needed clearance from anyone to be on their farms. Shehu had said those who died in the rice fields did not get military clearance to be on those fields. He said he was not blaming the dead but explaining the military operations in the area. Local residents say they had never had to get clearance from the military to be on their farms. They said the community had never been exempted from farming as they had planted seedlings during the rainy season and tended the fields up till now without taking permission from anyone. In response to the backlash, Shehu said his comment was based on military intelligence report that says the Zabamari marshlands are infested with animals and movements in and around those areas is subjected to military oversight. He said, quote, "I am human with tons of compassion and empathy and could not have said that the victims deserved their fate for ignoring security clearance," end quote. Shehu said he was only explaining the mode of military operations in the war zone of the Northeast. Nigeria's former finance minister, Dr Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, has been named Forbes CNBC Africa Person of the Year 2020. The former minister, who is a shoo-in for the post of Director General of the World Trade Organization, says she's thrilled. She said, quote, "This award is for Africans suffering the health and economic impacts of COVID-19. The energy and resilience of Africans inspire me," end quote. President of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, won the award last year, and Rwandan President Paul Kagame won it in 2018. Coming up, African stories. Zimbabwe's economy is projected to grow by 7.4% next year. And later, international news. Israeli legislators pass draft proposals to dissolve parliament.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Economic hopes are coming alive in Zimbabwe after Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube said last week the country's economy is expected to grow by 7.4% next year after a projected 4.1% contraction this year. Ncube made the projection while presenting the 2021 national budget to Parliament in Harare. Correspondent Frank Owakutuya was there.
The focus in 2021 will be on sustainable and inclusive growth driven by agriculture, mining and manufacturing. Players in the latter have welcomed local procurement measures that will prop up domestic industries.
I think one of the things we would also highlight as far as local procurement is concerned is that that needs to be followed up with the supportive instruments or enforcing instruments as quickly as possible to make sure that as much as is possible, everything that can be procured locally should be procured locally.
Rebates were extended for the dairy industry and fertilizer manufacturers, although more concessions are needed to level the playing field.
If we could have less and less duty on raw materials, because we are importing raw materials from countries that we have to compete with. We are then competing with imported products, imported finished products, some of them coming from countries that we are importing raw materials from.
The finance minister is planning to increase revenue by targeting previously untapped resources. A monthly presumptive tax has been prescribed for the informal sector, but the crucial question remains whether these predominantly survivalist operators can bear it, which could see some of them go further under the radar.
2021 is definitely going to be a tough year. The minister is actually looking to increase revenue collection against a shrinking economy. So it's going to be tough on business. So you'll see an increase in informalization, you'll see an increase in dollarization.
Relief for the formerly employed has been given through widened tax brackets and focus put on job creation.
We've seen the minister coming up with clear employment creation and poverty reduction annual targets in the national budget. And there's also a strong synchronity or complementarity between the national budget and also the national development strategy, which in my view, I think that's positive.
5.5% of GDP will be set aside to fund capital projects that will help bridge a debilitating infrastructure deficit.
A notable landmark bookstore in the Tunisian capital of Tunis is getting unusual traffic these days after news broke that the bookshop that has existed in the city for more than half a century was being battered to the point of destitution by the COVID-19 pandemic. People have been showing up to make a purchase to help keep the cultural iconic store open. Correspondent Adni Chawoji reports.
Fawzi Vili was only 17 when he joined his father Bouraoui as a bookseller apprentice here in downtown Tunis. Now there are over 300,000 books from all categories, including novels, essays, history books, collections of poetry, philosophy, academic and scientific research, as well as surveys by ancient and contemporary authors in 6 languages. The shop owner says their business is no longer lucrative as the number of clients is in decline.
I remember when clients used to queue up in front of my bookshop early in the morning when it was still closed. People were passionate about reading. They used to come to discover new books. It was a pleasant job. But now, Tunisians have deserted the few remaining bookshops in the old town in Tunis.
Fawzi refuses to give up the business he inherited 2 decades ago after spending more than 53 years in the used bookstore.
The crisis hit hard during the pandemic, but it had started several years ago. I have 2 employees and monthly electricity bills. I refuse to shut down my shop and I prefer to resist. I also promised my late father that I would never sell the boutique as many booksellers did to survive.
Iman learned about the bookshop crisis through social media. The PhD student and researcher came to support the Dean of Tunisian Booksellers and his Temple of Knowledge.
Supporting this business is everyone's responsibility. Searching for information on the internet is easier than in hundreds of books, but coming here is much more informative and fun. Browsing through a book is an exceptional experience. It's better than browsing the internet.
Tens of thousands of Tunisians have signed an online petition calling on the Ministry of Culture and the Education Ministry to revive the book sector and promote reading habits among students and pupils.
We've urged the government to dedicate a special fund in the 2021 budget to support booksellers. Tunisia cannot afford to lose the few remaining bookstores. Encouraging reading and financing education and culture is the state's responsibility.
Fawzi Vili says the oldest bookstore in Rue d'Angleterre will remain open as long as Tunisian and foreign readers are tempted to visit the old bazaar and to buy his used books. The bookseller of Tunis has refused many donations from civil society organizations. Some online campaigners have offered to launch a website for the bookshop. However, Fawzi clings to the old shopping habits.
When we return, international news. Israeli legislators passed draft proposals to dissolve parliament. And later, sport. League management company says NPFL won't start next Sunday.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you'll need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. With support from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as legislators have passed a proposal on Wednesday to dissolve the country's parliament. This means Israel will be forced into having its fourth national election in under 2 years. This happens just 7 months after the coalition took office in a declaration of national unity to confront the coronavirus crisis. But since then, the alliance between Netanyahu's Likud party and Defense Minister Benny Gantz's Blue and White has been locked in battles. The legislation is heading to a committee before coming before Parliament for final approval as early as next week. Prime Minister Netanyahu is on trial for a series of corruption charges. Gantz accuses the Prime Minister of hindering key governmental work, including the passage of a national budget. Political observers say lack of a budget has caused severe hardships and cutbacks for Israelis at a time when unemployment is estimated at more than 20%. If a budget for 2020 is not passed by December the 23rd, Israeli law stipulates an automatic dissolution of parliament and new elections. The number of persons who have died in a single day in the United States as a result of COVID-19 complications has reached a new record of more than 2,600. Health experts say this is the highest number since April and warn that these numbers are likely to increase. Director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Robert Redfield, says the mortality concerns are real. Johns Hopkins University confirmed the U.S. has reported almost 14 million coronavirus cases and more than 273,000 deaths. A U.S. Food and Drug Administration panel of external advisors will meet next Thursday to discuss whether to recommend emergency use authorization of the Pfizer vaccine. U.S. officials hope that 40% of adults in the U.S. could be given the shots in 3 months. And still in the United States, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is looking into reducing the recommended quarantine period after exposure to someone who is positive for COVID-19. If this comes into effect, those who have come in contact with infected persons. The U.S. Justice Department has been investigating whether intermediaries for a federal convict offered White House officials a bribe in exchange for a potential presidential pardon or commutation. Some court documents unsealed by a federal judge on Tuesday shows investigators were suspected a convict seeking the pardon was imprisoned as recently as this summer, and that 2 persons working on behalf of the convicts may have undertaken a secret lobbying campaign by approaching White House officials. But the documents offered very few clues about what the White House may have known about the scheme. One passage appears to show that a lawyer for the convict had discussions with the White House counsel's office about a pardon or commutation, but it was unclear whether the discussions were part of the scheme or a normal back and forth with the White House about a convict's case. The two persons may have offered to funnel money as political donations in exchange for the pardon or commutation, although it was unclear whether the money was supposed to be sent. 65-year-old Brazilian artist Jorge Roriz is known locally for recreating the magical world of Rio de Janeiro's carnival with its colorful costumes and fantastic floats on his works of art. Now, in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, he's using his art to make masks that don't attempt to hide, but rather accentuate the features of the wearer. Correspondent Lucretia Fancro has the story.
Gloves, fabric paint, brushes and a palette to mix skin tones, and a mask. Employing centuries-old painting techniques, 65-year-old Jorge Roriz has moved from theatrics into the more urgent business of saving people's lives. The Rio de Janeiro artist spent the last 40 years of his life creating costumes for what Brazilians call the fantasy of carnival. But when the festival was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, instead of despairing, he decided to help in the effort to persuade people to take mask wearing seriously.
I had the idea to communicate the importance for people to take care of themselves, to protect themselves.
Then he stumbled upon an even more persuasive idea: humor.
I decided to use myself as a character, with my own face, and went out to the streets. People pointed at me and thought it was funny because when I talk, nobody can see my lips moving.
Jorge says he tries to make his masks as lifelike as possible, using photographs his clients send directly to his phone. Painting up to 10 masks a day, he says he lost track of how many he has made since he started in April.
So you might not have noticed, but this is actually a mask of my face. Let's try it on. So, Jorge, how do you look?
Oh my God, Pocahontas!
Too bad you cannot see me smiling.
The masks include realistic depictions of beards, mustaches, and lipstick, depending on the client's photos and special requests. Orders are coming from all over Brazil and even from abroad.
Thank God I've had the privilege of being able to work and at the same time bringing some safety and happiness to people and giving them back a bit of their identity.
Jorge says he misses his job as a carnival artist, but agrees with the decision to wait for a vaccine before staging the festival again.
Up next, sport. League management company says NPFL won't start next Sunday. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, League Management Company has confirmed the 2020-2021 Nigeria Professional Football League season will not kick off this Sunday. The LMC had proposed Sunday for the league resumption and also released fixtures for the season to the clubs in a meeting. LMC spokesperson Harry Iwala says these are mere speculations. Argentine authorities have raided the home and office of Diego Maradona's psychiatrist Augustin Kosichov on suspicions of possible manslaughter. San Isidro Attorney General John Briard says no one has been officially charged in this case, although many are being investigated, including Kosichov. Kosichov's lawyer says the raids weren't surprising but important. He says his client is willing to cooperate with the authorities and insists Maradona's medical home care recommended by Kosichov met the proper medical criteria. That is